It has come down to this. An emergency request to the U.S. Supreme Court for a stay of execution in the case of Theodore Bundy has been rejected this evening. The vote was 5-4. Bundy is scheduled to die in Florida's electric chair tomorrow morning at 7.
January 23, 1989. Dawn edges over the concrete walls of Florida State Prison. The sky is pale, the air brittle with winter cold. A quiet stillness presses down on the compound. Inside, on death row, the fluorescent lights buzz softly. The usual murmur of the cell block is hushed. Ted Bundy sits awake in the dim, sour light of his cell. Steel bed, concrete walls, no windows. For nearly a decade, he has occupied this space, but today it feels narrower. He knows the hour is coming. The legal appeals have run dry. The phone will not ring. No governor's reprieve. The routine of confinement is broken. Today, there are eyes on every movement. Footsteps echo longer in the corridor. He's cheated the clock before. Not this time. Beyond the bars, the sun climbs higher. Time moves forward. And for the first time in years, so does the process he can no longer outrun. Before the final day unfolds, the shadow of what led here must be understood. Today, everything changes. Nothing will go as expected. Theodore Robert Cowell was born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. Raised by his grandparents, he believed his mother was his sister. His father's identity remained a blank space in his story. On the surface, he was bright, well-spoken, charming. Teachers praised him. Friends trusted him. He blended in.
Here is a man who seemingly had everything. He's intelligent, he's charismatic, he's handsome. He was on his way in the Republican Party.
He studied psychology, pursued law, smiled easily, listened well. But behind that smile was a deep fracture. Women close to him spoke of sudden, terrifying changes, expressions that turned cold, distant, unfamiliar. Bundy scored 39 out of 40 on the psychopathy checklist. Beneath the charm, control, deceit, and a brutal absence of empathy. He was convicted for the murders of Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy.
These are just a few of Ted Bundy's victims, the dead and the living.
And the abduction and murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. Officially, he confessed to 30 killings. The real count may never be known. His trial was a national spectacle. He defended himself, confident and composed. But the evidence, the bite mark, the blood, the testimonies, sealed his fate. Now, with the clock winding down, justice closes in.
It's just hours. Unless there's a last-minute stay, at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, they'll throw the switch on the electric chair at Florida State Prison, and finally, the tragic, twisted saga of Ted Bundy will be over.
January 24, 1989. The day begins like the dozens before it, yet every sound, every step feels heavier. Ted Bundy rises early in his death row cell. The air is cold, unmoving. Pale, overhead light hums above concrete walls. There is no window, no sky, just time. A guard brings him a small paper cup of coffee. It's lukewarm, bitter. He takes a sip, but the taste barely registers. His breakfast tray arrives not long after. Eggs, toast, grits, but he barely touches it. His stomach is tight, knotted by the weight of finality. There are no more motions to file, no lawyers to meet, no last-minute reprieve. He knows this, and he sits with it, alone. The guard walks past, glancing in. Bundy barely looks up. The charm, the arrogance, it no longer serves him. The mask has nothing left to hide behind. The hours stretch ahead, short and endless. The clock ticks. The cell stays silent. 8 a.m. Outside the death row block, a different kind of tension builds. In a nearby office, Ted Bundy's attorneys, Polly Nelson and Jim Coleman, are locked in a final, desperate push. Stacks of paperwork scatter across desks. Phones ring. Fingers type. They file emergency motions in rapid succession. State courts, federal courts. One argument remains: mental incompetence. If successful, it might delay the execution. Might buy hours, maybe more. Bundy, once his own defender in court, now waits helplessly as others fight on his behalf. The legal tools he once wielded are out of reach. Control has slipped through his fingers. By midday, the answers come. One by one, the courts respond. Denied, denied, denied. Just after noon, the final decision arrives. The U.S. Supreme Court rejects the last appeal. There will be no stay, no delay. The path forward is now fixed. Inside his cell, that truth settles in. The system he once outmaneuvered has spoken. There is nothing left to fight.
Still don't believe it. It just can't be. I keep shaking my head day after day, saying, how can this be? Because our son is the best son in the world. He's a very normal, active boy.
1 p.m. The prison gates remained shut to most, but one visitor was allowed through. Louise Bundy, Ted's mother, was led into a quiet, secured room. This would be their final meeting. For years, she held to the belief that her son was innocent, shielding herself from the truth that had become inescapable to the rest of the world. Now, facing him for the last time, that hope was gone. There were no outbursts, no long embraces. Their conversation was short, subdued, heavy with what couldn't be said. Ted remained composed. Louise tried to be, but as she left, tears overcame her. The weight of what he had done, of what was about to happen, crushed what remained of her strength. By 3 p.m., another visitor arrived, Pastor Fred Lawrence. Religion had become a fixture in Bundy's final months. They spoke privately. What was said remains between them, a search for peace, or something that resembled it. Then, at 5 p.m., as dusk approached, cameras were brought in. Bundy sat for one last interview, this time with evangelical leader James Dobson. His final message: a warning about the dangers of pornography, which he claimed had fueled his dissent. He expressed remorse. Some believed him, many did not. By nightfall, the cell block was quiet again. He met briefly with his attorney, then the prison chaplain. Outside, the crowd was growing. As the hours passed, the man once known for his poise and defiance began to unravel. Throughout the day, Ted Bundy grew quiet. The confidence that had once defined him had drained away. He was tired. He couldn't eat. Inside his cell, the weight of inevitability pressed down hard. He wept, shoulders shaking, head buried in his arms, as the death watch guards stood silently nearby. He had once argued in court, smiled for cameras, defied fate. But now, in the shadow of the electric chair known as Old Sparky, there was no performance left. His attorney, Polly Nelson, would later recall him in near panic, unable to sleep, unable to escape the reality that waited just beyond sunrise. 6 a.m., January 24th. The door opened. Bundy was awake. He was led to the shower, his last. The warm water, the dull sound against tile, one final moment of routine. Then a clean uniform, stiff fabric, stark. He declined a sedative, chose to meet death alert. His head, leg, and wrists were shaved, the skin prepared for the contact points. 2,000 volts would pass through him. The guards moved with quiet precision. There was no conversation, only steps forward. 6:30 a.m. The corridor outside Bundy's cell filled with footsteps. The time had come. Prison officials opened the door. Guards stood on either side as Ted Bundy stepped forward. The walk to the execution chamber was just a few dozen yards, but every step echoed with finality. The hallway was dim, sterile. Bundy's movements were stiff, his face pale. Witnesses later said his fear was unmistakable. Gone was the composure, the practiced charm. Only silence and dread remained. At 7 a.m., the execution chamber stood still. Bundy was guided to the center of the room and seated in Old Sparky. Leather straps tightened around his chest, wrists, and ankles. A soaked sponge was placed beneath the electrode cap on his shaved head. Another electrode was fastened to his leg. Every motion was measured, precise. Beyond the glass, 42 witnesses watched: law enforcement, journalists, family members of the dead. The room held its breath. Superintendent Tom Barton asked for final words. Bundy turned to his attorney and his pastor. "Jim and Fred," he said quietly, "I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." His voice was calm, but his hands trembled. As the final strap was secured, his eyes betrayed what words did not. 7:16 a.m. The executioner reached for the switch. With a jolt, 2,000 volts tore through Ted Bundy's body. His frame convulsed against the straps, rigid, seizing. A sharp, bitter scent filled the room, burning flesh. A soundless cry frozen behind the leather hood. Witnesses watched as the man who once taunted the courts, who escaped justice time and again, now faced a force he couldn't outrun. The current stopped. His body fell still. The silence was absolute. A paramedic moved in, checking for signs of life. Dr. Frank Kilgo stepped forward. He pulled the hood away, eyes wide, unfocused. No breath, no heartbeat. "He's dead," Kilgo said flatly. The clock read 7:16 a.m.